Chapter 146. The name Parrot War. Tess was quite unsettled by Sharon's swift change in stance. From what they had been through, she knew how rationally he viewed the world. Sharon wasn't someone who adjusted the situation according to his mood, but that didn't mean he was cold-blooded either. He simply knew how to control his emotions, yet there must have been numerous conflicts in his mind. Tess saw that Sharon's current condition might negatively affect the battle. Sharon, there's no need to worry. We're not going to fight. We're going to rescue Jesus' sister. It's enough to find out for ourselves what kind of person Marcia is. Sharon forced a smile. He knew why Tess was concerned, but that only made him more determined. If the woman he had seen with his own eyes was indeed a villain, he planned to forget all the emotions he had felt until now and defeat her with all his might. Don't worry, I won't make a mistake. Sharon kicked the horse and swiftly cut through the night air. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. There's no road for there's no road from the west to the hideout in the north. This is because there's an indigenous autonomous zone in the center. Those who kidnapped Yuna circled Mount Towa and headed towards the hideout. When they arrived at their destination, dawn was breaking. In a rundown building resembling a warehouse, Falcoa sat on a chair. Chewed loop shells were scattered at his feet as he sat there expressionless, half-closed pupils indicating a daze. The man who opened the warehouse door bowed to Falcoa and tossed the bag containing Yuna to the floor. A dull thud was heard, but no screams escaped. However, an intense tremor could be felt from inside the sack. From the extent of the tremors, one could tell how terrified she was. As Falcoa rubbed his chin, his subordinate pulled out a knife and tore the sack open. Yuna, soaked in tears and sweat, was revealed as if a cocoon had been opened. Yuna's eyes filled with desperation as she looked around in fear. She didn't know where she was, but the fact that she had been running all night told her that time was passing. Before her stood a man who didn't seem sane, gazing at her with dilated pupils, and near the entrance, frightening-looking men had blocked even the escape routes. Please forgive me. You can leave. The subordinates, who knew from experience what would happen if they disobeyed their boss, opened the door and disappeared as soon as Falcoa instructed them. Alone with Yuna, Falcoa approached, chewing on loop. You're better than I expected. Do you know why you're here? I don't know. Please let me go back home. I'm sorry, but I can't. My plan is to make you the most miserable human being in the world. Why? Because your brother sold you. Yuna froze as if in shock, but she still believed in Jeez with all her heart. What kind of brother would sell his little sister to someone like this? That can't be true. My older brother cares about me more than anyone. Is that so? Then why are you here now? I gave Jeez a tremendous gift and got you for him. Falcoa didn't think his words were false. After all, he had saved his life. Wasn't that like giving him a large sum of money? Furthermore, he even guaranteed him time to miss Amy, so it wasn't an exaggeration to say he was Jesus' benefactor. That can't be true. My older brother couldn't have sold me. Yuna screamed as she clutched her chest to overcome her fear. The fact that she had been dragged to an unknown place was shocking, but even more so was the idea that her brother had sold her. Send me to my older brother. I'll ask him myself. Hey, little miss, you seem not to understand the situation. You can't go home. You can never go back. There are two options. Either you die by my hand, or you commit suicide. No, that can't be true. Yeah, Falcoa abruptly approached and grabbed Yuna's wrist. Pulled by an irresistible force, Yuna was forced to stand up and was thrown into Falcoa's arms. Stay away, you bad man. For a moment, Falcoa, relishing the resistance of the delicate girl, twisted Yuna's arms and broke it. Then threateningly, he grasped both cheeks in his hands. Don't exhaust yourself too soon. There'll be plenty of chances for you to scream. At that moment, the warehouse door opened and someone entered. A cold voice echoed around the warehouse. Falcoa, human trafficking goes against the rules. Freeman. Falcoa frowned in disgust. Agado Freeman, the only man in the pirate mercenary band with a higher rank than his, observed the situation in the warehouse with sunken eyes. Standing over 190 centimeter tall and dressed in a long white coat, he appeared equally pale. His eyebrows were completely shaved, and his lips were as thin as those of an ill person. As the person who served as the vice captain of Parrot Bandits, the predecessor of the Freeman organization, he was a mastermind and used techniques involving magic bullets. Yet within that organization, it was believed that he surpassed even Lucas in pure physical ability. What's this all of a sudden? I haven't seen you in a long time. Did you lose some money? Falcoa spoke with a note of disgust. Since the days of the Parrot mercenary band, Freeman was the indisputable second in command, but Falcoa was the only one in the organization given a free hand. The conflict between the vice captain and the leader intensified after they entered the island. It was due to Freeman's desire to maintain the rules of the old mercenaries even after they fell into banditry. Feeding dozens of subordinates dogged as rebels required massive funds, but Freeman couldn't find a solution for that. The person who had led such an organization for 5 years was Volkova. He forcibly expelled the gang bosses from the island and sustained the organization with the money left over from the distribution of the drug called Loop. There was a reason why Freeman had tolerated Volkova's misdeeds despite knowing them. But this time, it was too much. If you're going to bear the name of Parrot, there's a line you shouldn't cross. Although Freeman was just a suit and tie leader, he stuck to the policy of strictly punishing human trafficking and looting through violence. Do you not know the rules of the organization? Human trafficking degrades the standing of the Parrot mercenaries. Parrot mercenaries? Since when have we lived just looking at past glories? Look at us now. Do you think the organization could have survived without the money I brought? You've gone crazy, Volkova. I'll commend your hard work for the organization, regardless of the method, but make this clear, I am the one leading the organization. I don't care. I don't recognize you. Wasn't that the plan from the start? You can't suddenly act as if you're the boss. An icy aura surged from Freeman, who had been observing Falcoa's defiant behavior. If he were a re- if he were a weaker creature, it would be such an intense energy that it would kill just by being exposed. However, Falcoa absorbed the murky energy as if it were stabbing him in the body with a knife. It was painful, but he accepted it without changing his expression. Cuckoo, man, you're scary. Freeman was at a loss. For such a warrior, pain and anger were mere accelerators that aggravated the situation. Has he become a wild dog to this extent? Even if it wasn't for Lube, Falcao was a person driven solely by desire from the beginning. It was just that his desire focused on combat and killing, which suited the mercenaries. However, now that he was working as a tavern owner in the island, he was in a state of frustration. Even as he indulged in Lube, alcohol, and women, it was difficult to appease his innate madness. Please forgive me, as Yuna trembled and begged. Freeman, who had been watching her, turned his gaze back to Falcoa and said, do you really have to go this far? Have you lost even the pride of the parrots? Pride? Hey, let me tell you something. The parrot mercenary band has already ended. The leader is gone, and their subordinates are also at their limit. You should also surrender and come to our side. Falcawa buried his face into Yuna's neck as if to show off. Still, Freeman did not move. It was because Falcawa was now showing a murderous intent. The moment he moves, the battle will begin. When that happens, one of the two pillars holding up the parrot will collapse one way or another. If they truly fight, it would be difficult for anyone to guess the outcome, but Falcoa was confident because he knew that Freeman couldn't control him. Why not try quitting? I'll tell my subordinate you can take some money. It would be good if you admitted it and learned to enjoy it. Oh, it's a real mess, a mess. The door opened and the woman's voice was heard. Falcoa quickly turned his head at the voice that pierced his mind, but before he could see anything, he received a blow to the jaw and turned his face away. Wow, then a powerful kick struck Falcoa's abdomen. As Falcoa crouched on the ground, Yuna also lost strength in her legs and fell. Damn, this is really unfortunate. Falcoa spat saliva and slowly got up. The reason he, who had an animal-like reflexes, couldn't avoid two attacks was that he unconsciously suppressed counterattacks. Claire Marcia, standing there, was the leader of the pirate mercenary band, which one reigned over hundreds of mercenaries. Is she really the leader? Is there a fake one? Half-breed, you've lost your senses because you've been free for a few years. Falcoa wasn't angry. No, he didn't even show hostility. To a member of the mercenary band, Marcia was such an existence. As the first leader of the pirate mercenaries, it took more than strength to elevate the mercenary band to an A rank in a few years. And Marcia did it with her outstanding skills. Moreover, she was a powerful figure who was the only one in the organization classified as a Class A criminal. However, Falcoa didn't follow Marcia for such trivial reasons. He was defining a woman named Marcia in this way. Fallen Marcia. Marcia is kind and caring, but it's not an exaggeration to say that almost none of the people she embraced were normal. Those abandoned by their families, those born to crave blood by nature, social outcasts who couldn't reveal their existence outside the battlefield. Falcoa was one of them. When no one treated his mental illness and only pushed him out of society, Marcia was the only person who embraced him. In Parrot Bandits, Marcia was an older sister and a mother, and the best leader they could trust and rely on in any situation. However, it was true that even such a leader would have a burst of anger. What does it mean to show up now without contacting for several years? Darn it, where have you been hiding? You're not even the leader. All this time You've become a drug addict, haven't you? Falco's face hardened. Even his dilated pupils became clearer, at least for this moment. He must have heard it countless times in the last 5 years, but for some reason, it felt like he was hearing it for the first time. Drug addict, is that really the case? Has he, who used to be called a demon in the battlefield, now become a drug addict? Freeman approached and bowed his head to Marcia. It's been a while, Captain. When did you return? When I heard the news that Lucas was killed, I left immediately. It will definitely blow his hideout. It seems we'll have to clear this place soon. After explaining this to Freeman, Marcia approached Falcoa. As she approached Falcoa, as if surprised, Subtly avoided her gaze. Falcoa, I'm sure I told you, human trafficking is not allowed. Falcoa's forehead wrinkled. Now that he thought about it, there was nothing to be ashamed of. All the fault lies with Marcia, who abandoned the organization and left. End of chapter 146. Chapter 147. Forced March 1. He knows she's being pursued by the Magic Association, but how can not even send a message? If I hadn't thought my subordinates the taste of money, the organization would have already collapsed. Stop talking nonsense. You're not in a position to tell me what to do, right? We are not the Parrot Mercenary Band, nor a band of bandits. We're just a bunch of thugs stuck on an island. So, are you going to act like a fool till the end? Humph, I earned it. I made the organization move forward with what I earned. Do you dare to criticize me instead of praising me? Then what have you been doing all this time? You don't need to worry about that. If you're not going to follow the rules I've set, then drop the name Parrot right now. Haha, you call that blackmail? Fine, I'll drop it, Parrot. Now, we're the Freeman organization. Since you left, we haven't even been called Parrot. Fine, from this moment, you're not a parrot. I don't know how much you've gained, but pick it all up and get out of here. Damn it. Falcoa exploded in anger. Even for Marcia, this was too much. Her parrot was also mixed with his blood. The honor of being the strongest mercenary group was not something that could be traded for mere money. If you can't give up the name Parrot, heed my words. I'm not telling you to lead a good life, but if you want something, fight for it. Extorting the weak is unacceptable. Falcoa smiled. He hated Marcia for taking advantage of him, even though he knew he couldn't leave Dolores. I always get what I want. You're the same. Someday, you'll be mine. Instead of getting angry, Marcia gently smiled as if consoling a naughty child. Sounds refreshing after a long time. Anyway, do your best. I'm the kind of person who doesn't stop a man from coming or going. Falcoa clenched his fists and looked at Marcia. It was as if his eyes were on fire. In reality, he was using the powerful eye technique, but Marcia didn't even change her complexion. It was a testament to how strong her will was. Damn it. You're as annoying as ever. I'm done. I'm going out for a drink. Stay put and stay at the hideout. It's because we're going to have a meeting at the leader and higher level. And from now on, drugs are prohibited. If you get caught, you should really know that you'll die for me. Falcoa left the warehouse without even answering, but Marcia knew he would attend the meeting and wouldn't even touch the drugs, because the man who could lead him into a blood-soaked battlefield had returned. Once the man left, Freeman returned with Marcia, not as a leader, but as a friend, from the same hometown, and greeted her again. I'm glad you're back safely. I was worried because I couldn't locate you. Of course, you couldn't. Did you think they'd catch me easily? Anyway, what happened to Falcoa? Can we even use him like this? He was crazy, but when he held a sword, he was unstoppable. I can't blame Falcoa alone. We're the ones who took away his battlefield. Hoo hoo. No, that was me. Even so, thanks to him, we've managed to gather military funds until now. As soon as you returned, I had prepared so we could leave for another country at any moment. Marcia puffed her cheeks as if she didn't like it. It was because she knew how Falcoa had brought in the funds. In the end, is a human being, a being that has no choice but to adapt to reality. The state of the pirate mercenary bands who went crazy without knowing how terrifying the world was now a thing of the past. She had left home at 17, creating this mercenary group with her childhood friend Freeman. They had lost their lifelong base due to politicians' schemes, but they always wanted to uphold the value of Bharat. But now, aren't they like everyone else, seeking profit by any means necessary, and always seeking approval from those in power? Since when did we become like this? It's nothing more than a body betrayed by the nation. It can't be helped if we want to survive. Yeah, I guess so. But Freeman, don't tell me you're broken too. Freeman remained silent. Not that he felt guilty, it just hurt that a friend he admired since childhood doubted him. For me, neither the organization nor anything else matters. Even the name Pirates holds no value. I only hope you're safe. Shuddering, Marcia shivered. Even a dog would know Freeman's emotions if he carried a badge called Parrot. There was nothing particularly moving, but he always appealed in this way, and she was as angry as death. Why do you only hope for my safety? Why? You. When Marcia when Marcia asked again despite his obvious understanding, Freeman struggled to find the right words among the many words that came to mind. Because you're our leader. Marcia snorted. It seemed there was no need to worry about Freeman. His annoying nature hadn't changed. Anyway, now that I'm back, it's time to reorganize. Marcia planned to leave the organization, take refuge in another country, and start anew. The first step was to clean up the mess her subordinates had made. Hey, you there. Marcia turned her head. At the sound of sobbing, Yuna was crying pitifully, unable to even think about escaping. She avoided horror, but Marcia could understand. She was shocked by the fact that a man whose name she didn't even know had treated her carelessly. She was a woman. What happened? Where did you get this girl from? There's a street dealer among the guys who works for Falcoa. He said she's his sister. How absurd. Now he's even after the younger sister of his subordinate. I don't know. The main point seems to be about money. Seriously, is there something I don't know? Freeman conveyed the story he heard from his subordinate, from the anecdotes between Jace and Amy to the circumstances surrounding Sharon's intrusion into the royal palace that led to bringing Yuna. Marcia, who had been listening intently, brightened up when Sharon's story came to light. Oh, now that I see, is this a story I also know? Do you know? How do you know about this case? Marcia smiled and pursed her lips. Because I'm a genius. After all, in the end, life is destined to tangle this way. What the hell is going on? Tell me. No, well, it's a minor event. No need to worry. If Marcia didn't tell him, Freeman also had no intention to continue. It wasn't anything new for her to roam around whenever she was bored. Besides, that was the only way she survived in this world. Marcia received numerous reports from Freeman. There was nothing particularly troublesome. The funds earned by Falcoa were sufficient to start anew in a foreign country, and Freeman's troops were still in decent combat condition. All right, good work. But how about we liquidate the assets? Are you bothered by the funds Falcoa raised? A bit, you know. It's time for Pirates resurgence, but it's like establishing an organization with money obtained from drug sales from the beginning. That's unlike you. After all, money is money. I don't like the way it was done either, but burying money in the ground just for that is something only kids do. I know. Anyway, this agenda will be discussed in a later meeting, but first, at that moment, the door burst open and the subordinate rushed in. Marcia and Freeman observed him with puzzled expressions. This was a remote area where government influence didn't reach. There shouldn't be a need to rush in panting. Marcia said with a smile. What's wrong? Do you have a stomach ache? There's no bathroom here. Captain, you're back. The member who found Marcia couldn't hide his surprise. However, the situation was urgent, so he reported without room for happiness. Captain, there's a big problem. We're under attack. Attack? What sudden attack? From the government? It doesn't seem like it. They're youngsters, a group of four. According to the report, they seem to be two mages and two swordsmen. Marcia discovered who they were just by hearing that. It was indeed odd for them to come to rescue a street urchin's sister, with whom they had fought at the port, but Marcia couldn't deny the possibility. Well, if it's such an annoying brat, it might be possible. Is there a guy named Sharon among them, among the attackers? Sorry, I don't really know the names well. Freeman, who had changed his tone of voice at some point, spoke politely. Captain, why don't you hand over this girl instead? Since we're about to put the organization in order, making a scene seems to be a hassle. Thinking it odd to find such a simple-minded man, Marcia analyzed the situation. Hand over the girl. Isn't it a bit funny? We kidnap and then return when they come looking. Or what? Are you saying they could break their way here? That won't happen. While the captain was away, we completely fortified this place. The tactical aspects using magic circles and magical weapons are perfect. Unless they are very skilled, they'll die before reaching the first gate. Then there's no problem, right? Go and kill them. I'll take care of this girl. Seems like you've lost your edge after a few years. You're completely naive, aren't you? As soon as Marcia finished her sentence, Freeman immediately prepared to mobilize his men. It was embarrassing in itself to show a disheveled appearance in front of his captain, especially when he thought he was well prepared. It was even more unfair. Deploy all forces to training positions. It's a real combat situation. Yes, I'll relay that now. Freeman's men immediately sprung into action, gathering their teams, forming their troops, and heading to their designated positions took no more than 5 minutes. Marcia then settled into her chair with a satisfied smile. You handled it quite well, after all. I thought you were just fooling around until now. Everyone has been waiting for this day. Since your return, they've been working even harder. Humph, how long do I have to take care of you and even cuddle you? It's time you started doing things on your own. By the way, what about you? Aren't you going to fight? I'll stay here. Being by your side is what I need to do. Marcia looked at Freeman with a perplexed look on her face. Of course, as one of the first members of the mercenary bands, he also acted as a bodyguard. But every time he did, Marcia felt a shiver down her spine. I can't look at you because it's truly pathetic. Do you think I'm fine? I'll find you cool. As if Freeman had already made up his mind, he didn't think of leaving Marcia's side. Marcia's face turned red with anger. She had always hated this about him since childhood. Not knowing how to express emotions and acting stubbornly had annoyed her more than once or twice. Hey, don't just stand there like an idiot. Go. Do you think you're my husband or something? Marcia lifted her leg from the chair and kicked Freeman on the backside. At her action, as if moved by the inertia, Freeman took a step forward and moved his body. He then silently left the warehouse, maintaining his silence until the end. When everyone was gone, Marcia stretched with a relaxed smile as if nothing had happened. While it was true that she was excited about the long-awaited battle, what intrigued her most was Sharon. Sharon was the kind of person Marcia despised the most. There was no one in the world who could truly embrace others' pain. Her adoptive father also finally revealed his true nature. The mercy he showed the orphan was indeed a step towards his horrible desires, and when Marcia realized this, she awakened. End of chapter 147. Chapter 148. Forced Match. Forced March. 2. Hoo, I still wished they'd come further, right, Yuna? I'm dying to see what expression that kid will have when he sees me. Help me, please. Send me home. Help me, please send me home. Yuna knelt down and pleaded with Marcia. She could tell by the attitude of her subordinates that Marcia held the top position in the organization. It's okay, don't be afraid. Then, will you send me home? Of course, there's a lot of commotion outside right now, so I'll send you when everything calms down. Speaking of which, can I ask you for a favor? Yes, what do you want? Approaching Yuna, Marcia gently stroked her hair. Gradually, Yuna's eyes began to lose focus and then closed. Huh, what? Yuna didn't even realize she had closed her eyes. She heard a buzzing in her ears and lost consciousness. Without realizing it, catching Yuna as she started to fall forward, Marcia looked at her tenderly, then turned her head and directed a cold smile. Hoo, now the fun game begins. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Volkowa's men were wild and violent, as if fear did not exist at all. They brandished their swords while dealing with mediocre attacks with their naked bodies. Attack with the strength of the wall charge. If the wall charge, their main attack strategy was guerrilla warfare. They took turns attacking in zigzags, controlling their endurance. For Sharon and his group, who had never experienced a war, it was terrifying. But the essence of guerrilla warfare was not in ambushes, but in retreat. It seemed like the enemies had no intention of fighting head-on. Detach the strength of the wall. Retreat for now. Where do you think you're running to? Amy quickly shot a series of flame strikes. At that moment, the bodies of the enemies shone and turned into flashes of light, soaring into the sky. A sharp voice that shook the air pierced through the sky. Oh, how annoying. We lost them again. When Amy kicked her feet in frustration, Rian comforted her by patting her shoulder. But the enemies are also giving it their all. Their number is increasing, so for now, Yuna should be safe. That's good news for us. Sharon looked at his friends and said, let's assess our situation. Is anyone injured? Injuries must be visually checked. If it's a fight in the neighborhood, one will notice it only through nosebleeds. But in a life-threatening battle, you might not feel pain because too much endorphin is secreted against adrenaline. The four of them felt relieved to realize there was no problem after checking each other's physical condition. However, the enemies also suffered no injuries. Even if they did their best to scare them off, they vanished like a ghost at the decisive moment. We haven't been able to take down a single person so far. This could negatively impact future battles. Amy shared what she had analyzed so far. I've observed it, and I think the secret lies in the bracelets they're wearing. It's definitely a magical device that triggers spatial movement. Sharon asked with a skeptical expression, is that possible? It's different from the magic bullet. Spatial movement is a magic that moves a wizard. Without spirit zone, you can't establish a destination and it's impossible to activate it. Amy also had doubts about that, but strictly speaking, it wasn't entirely possible. Maybe there's a possibility it's linked to the magic circle. Magic circle is a scheme that records a specific image in space and emits magic by itself. Therefore, by borrowing the power of the magic circle, it was possible for non-mages to use magic. Of course, you can cast spatial movement with a magic circle, but in theory, if you link it to a magic circle registered in a specific location, it's possible. I am understanding the concept of magic. Sharon nodded. However, Tess was concerned about something else. Is that possible for a group of fallen mercenaries? As far as I know, drawing the magic circle requires not only manpower but a lot of money. Besides, spatial movement is high level magic, isn't it? That's right. It's probably an intermediate level magic circle. Even if you want to draw just one magic circle, you need at least 5 mages working all day. But for them, it's possible. Falcoa has the loop monopoly. The mercenaries we met in the ruins were like that too. Loop's profit margin is huge. After all, they strengthened the base by selling drugs. They sold drugs and strengthened their base. It all makes sense then. How much money did those bastards make selling drugs? Isn't this a level that can't be reached with just one magic circle? There was some truth in Tess' words. Based on her question, Sharon began to review the battles they had fought. In the valley where the first battle took place, the enemies first withdrew. They also retreated to the forest and once again used spatial movement here. From my perspective, if we calculate the distance we have to cover, there are probably hundreds of magic circles drawn. Hundreds? Tess' mouth opened in shock. An intermediate magic circle that requires 5 wizards to adhere to it all day. If there are hundreds of them, how much gold have they scattered on this land? Do you really think they would spend that much? If you just look at the distance, a few dozen would be enough. If there really are hundreds of magic circles, we couldn't catch them in any situation. At that moment, Tess realized something from her own words and slapped her palm. Ah, I see now. Good. Do you understand now? They set it up so they couldn't be caught in any situation. They've interconnected the entire northern forest. If you keep fighting like this, we, being numerically inferior, will tire out first, will collapse before reaching the top. Their resentment towards those who strengthened their base by selling drugs intensified, but now was the time to think of a solution rather than being emotional. So what do we do now? What if we erase the magic circles? No matter where we fight, if the enemies escape, it's not something we can do by simply chasing them. Amy shook her head. Tess's idea made sense, but there was another problem. It's not easy. A magic circle is a record engraved in space, so to remove it, you can't just erase the drawing. You have to erase that space. Doing that for hundreds could take days. Tess finally understood the situation and bit her lip. When a minority deals with a group, it's important to reduce the number in some way. But they were blocking that method beforehand. Sharon unexpectedly agreed with Tess. No, it might be worth a try. Let's erase one. Just one. Out of hundreds, erasing one won't make a difference. From our point of view, yes, but maybe they think differently. If they put in so much effort to build a network, wouldn't they value even one magic circle? They might swarm in to defend it. Ah, I see. Psychological warfare. Tess quickly recognized Sharon's plan. War is often said to be a game of power played with money, but the side with better funds isn't always the winner. This is because human psychology works complexly in war. The more you have to protect, the weaker you become psychologically. For instance, if you raised an elite soldier with 100 gold coins but couldn't deploy them, it's a waste. This kind of situation really occurs in war. Even though they invested money to start a war, they couldn't field elite soldiers because it was a loss of money, and ultimately, their castle was taken by cheap soldiers. Amy analyzed Sharon's strategy. She was saying that if she couldn't pursue their enemies, she'd prefer to lure them. Indeed, it was the most viable strategy in this situation, but that didn't necessarily solve the original problem. This time, we have to weigh the efficiency. I didn't say it because I thought destroying the magic circle wasn't an option, but neutralizing the effect of the magic circle is much more difficult than you think. Rian grabbed his straight sword upside down and slammed it into the ground with all his might. Wouldn't it be okay if I plowed the ground with my sword until the magic circle completely disappears? That's not incidental. The magic circle we see with our eyes is nothing more than a symbol that embodies a concept. Sharon understood what Amy was trying to say and gave a clear definition. So, unless the space itself is destroyed to the point of erasing it, does the concept of the magic circle not disappear? That's right. So there are two main ways to destroy the magic circle. Either neutralize the concept itself with clear magic, or destroy the magic circle until the concept disintegrates. The former is impossible for us, and the latter requires time. Tess realized why Amy was skeptical about this approach. So that's how it is. Are you saying that the manpower needed to destroy a single magic circle is less efficient than recklessly advancing? That's right. If we can't destroy it in at least 10 minutes, I think it's better to proceed to our destination in this state. Of course, the basic intention itself of using the enemy's psychology is a good idea. As soon as all the necessary information for the strategy was shared, the amount of conversation decreased. In such situations, it was best to follow one person's opinion. Rian looked at Sharon asking for a decision. What will we do, Sharon? Sharon was also destined to be conflicted as long as the hostage was being held in being held, it would be better to move as quickly as possible, but being too greedy could jeopardize the rescue mission. Let's destroy the magic circle. I'll give it a try. When Sharon, who had finally made a decision, voiced his thoughts, Amy looked at him in surprise. Sharon, whose strength lies in insight, was not the type to be bound by odds, but he also didn't completely ignore the chances of success. In his estimation, the probability of destroying the magic circle in 10 minutes was less than 10%. Are you sure it's okay? You don't have magic that can achieve that in time, right? Of all the magics Sharon could use, the most powerful was definitely the photon cannon. However, massing light was not enough to counter the weight of the Earth. Of course, if it were shot at high speed, it would be possible to destroy one of them in 10 minutes. However, the mental energy exhausted in the process would undoubtedly put him at a disadvantage in the battle to come. Another possibility was the laser, but Amy was also skeptical about it. The magic that focuses energy locally to cause molecular vibrations has the advantage of destroying matter regardless of its durability. However, its range was inherently limited. I'll try. I have an idea. Amy couldn't imagine how Sharon intended to destroy the magic circle for the magic circle. How Sharon intended to destroy the magic circle, but for now it was best to trust in his words. This was because Sharon's intuition calculating multiple variables at once rarely missed the mark. To get a more accurate conclusion, there might have been someone with Iroki, but as he wasn't present, if Sharon's predictions went astray, it would be seen as an unforeseen circumstance. Concluding her thoughts, Amy nodded and said, "All right then, Tess and I will move on in one group, and Sharon and Rian will move in another group. Maintain a distance of 50 meters between each pair. Let's scan the surroundings using teleportation. We need to find the magic circle. Understood, but be careful if we focus only on keeping the distance. We might collide with other obstacles. Teleporting in a forest is risky. Even Sharon is a specialist in teleportation, needed a high degree of concentration to navigate through a forest. However, Amy replied, seeming a bit irritated by Sharon's caution. Who are you worried about now? You don't think of me the same way as those supernatural beings, right? It was a statement to allay Sharon's concerns, but it wasn't necessarily wrong either. She was also Amy. She was also a senior student who had mastered the uncrossable bridge and even had red eyes, which meant the possibility of an accidental collision was almost nil. End of chapter 148. Chapter 149. Forced March 3. Just as they were about to officially begin the operation, Tess, who had been lost in her thoughts for a moment, suddenly spoke. Wait a second, there's one thing I need to check before we start. Check what? If this operation succeeds, it will increase the likelihood of a direct battle with the enemies. So there's something I want to consult with Rian. What? Is there something wrong with me? Rian looked puzzled. Tess then asked him, looking at him with a serious expression, unlike before. Rian, have you ever killed someone? The atmosphere became as quiet as a dead mouse. Rian blinked his sword by his side. Honestly, he had never thought about it, or rather was it something that needed consideration. All knights vaguely committed to the idea. A sword is a tool for cutting people. They thought that if they were prepared to use that tool for the rest of their lives, there was no need to worry about other secondary issues. No, I haven't. And you? A few times, when I went with my father to suppress bandits. Really? But what's the problem with that? Rian, the resolve to die and the resolve to kill are completely different. The same goes for mages, but especially we have to cut people with our own hands. The enemies faced by Sharon and the group were not local thugs. The Parrot Mercenary Band made a name for itself in other countries. They were all professionals who had experienced countless battles. Of course, I trust your bravery. It's silly to think that a swordsman goes through life without staining the sword with blood, but if it's your first time, you might falter during battle. Rian sighed and thought. Faltering during battle. Of course, cutting people wasn't exactly something pleasant to do, but on the other hand, he felt that it didn't matter at all. Thus, is a dangerous and murder is a dangerous and complicated issue, so I understand why you're concerned, but I won't falter. Silly, I'm saying it's not that easy to kill someone. I've always been killing. Tess. His eyes glinted. Rayan looked at his reflection in the straight sword and continued, and I've died countless times too. At that moment, Rian looked at Tess with furious eyes. Even when I was told to give up the sword because I had no talent, even when I really wanted to give up, I wielded my sword. In the process, I killed countless enemies and was killed by countless enemies. Rian's straight sword extended to the north. If Rian were a statue, he would have fallen forward under the weight of his sword, but he didn't move as if his legs were pinned in place. Tess, okay? Never in all my life have I wielded the sword with clumsy determination. Regardless of whether there was an enemy in front of me or not, I always wielded my sword desperately. Everyone could read the determination in Rian's words. Rian sheathed his straight sword with a smile as if nothing had happened. I won't falter. I am Sharon's sword. I simply reduce what Sharon wants. So don't worry. That was why Tess chose Rian over many other talented swordsmen. Rian was unfeeling. That's why he couldn't even use Kema. However, the human determination that arises from the weight of life itself was not something that could be achieved with talent or skill. Tess, who had been looking at Rian for a while, smiled contentedly and looked at everyone. Great. I'm not worried anymore. Let's start. Tess' words also ignited Sharon and Amy. Rian's words that had awakened their fighting spirit. So Amy will go first. Sharon grabbed Rian and cast photon magic. A flash of light flickered, and the two disappeared into the forest, immediately followed by Amy and Tess. The sight of two flashes passing through the dense forest was a dazzling sight, like a reflections in a mirror. They zigzagged through the forest with acute and obtuse angles, with erratic movements sweeping through the woods. The location of the magic circle was unknown, but by calculating the enemy's movements, they got an approximate distance. After wandering through the forest for about 10 minutes, they found the location of the first magic circle. The magic circle is also a magical body, so if it enters the radius of the spirit zone, they can clearly sense its presence. If stealth magic is applied, the detection difficulty reaches its peak. However, no matter how much money the mercenaries had, reaching this far was an impossible task. Even if all the mobilized mages were combined for the intermediate magic circle, it was less than one-tenth the cost of hiring a mage for stealth magic. So in the end, it wasn't feasible. Carrying out such a large operation was not possible. While Rian was cutting through the dense bushes, he saw a magic circle drawn in the grass-covered clearing. Seeing the magic circle for the first time in real life, Sharon was surprised by how much larger it was than he had imagined. Amy looked around and nodded. As expected, it's an intermediate level magic circle. It must have been very difficult to create. A magic circle with a radius of more than 5 meters emitted red light as if reacting to the spirit zone. Inside it, there were circles of various sizes engraved with beautiful schemes that could be considered works of art. Wait, let me take a look. After acquiring some knowledge in her final year, Amy carefully examined the magic circle. The assessment criteria for the magic circle could be divided into three main parts. The first was the color representing the strength of mana, the second was the density of functions, and the third was the connectivity of the magic circles drawn inside it. From Amy's point of view, the color and density of the magic circles were a bit low, but the connectivity itself was excellent. This meant that it was most likely created with the help of an official organization. Oh, this is giving me a headache. It seems like it was inscribed by a formally registered magic company, as it was illegally earned money. I thought they might have recruited a shadow mage. Is that an important issue? The feature of an official company is that it is designed according to standards, so the connectivity is good. In other words, the durability of the magic circle is high. Can you really do it in 10 minutes? I guess I should at least try. The truth is, I'm not sure if I can succeed. What? How can you say that now? It was your idea. I'm sorry, but I have some confidence. And if you succeed, Sharon looked up for a moment and mentally calculated before revealing an approximate figure. Maybe we can destroy it in 1 minute instead of 10. What? What? 1 minute? Amy's eyes widened. This was none other than an intermediate level magic circle. It was almost impossible for them to neutralize this magic circle in a minute unless they had a professional dismantling team. The strength of the mobilized magic circle and engraved by an official company was durability. Therefore, there was a chance that the concept would not disappear even if the ground was pulverized by the release of powerful physical magic. Amy thought that at least the ground would have to be ground down to the size of a bean, and she knew Sharon didn't have magic capable of such power. What are you planning to do? Are you sure? Breaking it gently won't work. No, if that happens, the magic circle will disintegrate, and it could be even more difficult. I see. I'll give it a try. Amy became more and more anxious. When she heard the response, it was clear that he hadn't even thought that far ahead. Can he really do it? If they failed here, they would have wasted unnecessary time. Chiron took his place in the center of the magic circle, Amy expecting a vertical attack from the sky considering the power tilted her head at the unexpected sight. What are you going to do from there? Can you create an impact from that spot? Yes, however, it might be dangerous because it's the first time. Stay outside the radius. Following Chiron's words, the three stepped back. Though they were anxious, their expectations were equally high. If successful, they could change the course of their unfavorable situation in an instant. As the magic circles were destroyed, the enemy's range of activity would gradually decrease. If in that case, it was possible to end the battle quickly, because their side with two mages was far ahead in terms of firepower. Sharon closed his eyes and took a deep breath. With legs apart, he slowly bent his back and pressed his fist against the ground. There were no immediately perceptible changes. It was so peaceful that one might wonder if such leisure was allowed in a fierce battlefield. But Amy was different. At first, she looked at Sharon skeptically, but her eyes filled with surprise and her shoulders trembled before she realized. Sharon, you. Tess looked at Amy as if something was strange. Although Tess' eyes didn't see anything, Amy's face turned pale as if she had seen a monster. Amy, what's wrong? What is Sharon doing right now? I didn't expect him to use that. No, now that I think about it, it was possible. What exactly is it? Explain, I'm curious. It's better that we move away first. That could be really dangerous. When Amy stepped back, Rian and Tess followed her to a new location. Even amid that, the swordsman felt confused. It was because Amy's retreat distance had exceeded more than twice the distance from where she had retreated before. Explain now, what exactly do you see? It's not what I see, but what I feel. It's the change happening to Sharon. You feel it? What do you feel? Spirit zone, right now. Sharon's spirit zone is moving at a dizzying speed. Amy couldn't believe what she was saying. How strong is the durability required for the spirit zone to repeat expansion and contraction so quickly? It must be mental pulse, but it's too fast. At this level, it's at Miss Ethelia's level. The mental pulse Amy was currently feeling from Sharon exceeded 10 times per second, but Sharon couldn't be satisfied even with this. In the Class 5 mental pulse test, he scored 410 points, pulsing 13.6 times per second for 30 seconds. Then he thought it should be at least twice as fast because the radius is different. At that moment, if the maximum expansion radius was 20 meters in diameter, now the diameter of the magic circle was 5 meters. As the round trip distance shortened, the pulsation speed had to increase. The question was if his mental strength could bear it. I have no choice but to do it. Let's make more precise adjustments. While Sharon slightly furrowed his brow, Amy, who immediately felt the change, spoke with a trembling voice. My goodness, it's getting faster every time. As the radios narrowed, the mental pulsation began to exceed 15 times per second. If you realize that counting from 1 to 15 in a second is impossible, you'll guess how fast it is. If it were an ordinary mage, their mind would collapse even before reaching that far. However, Sharon's durability using Diamond Indestructible was currently incomparable. Finally, the maximum expansion radius of the spirit zone coincided with the limit of the magic circle. The remaining process was to maintain the current pace while casting the magic. To withstand the double burden of mental pulse and magic casting, intense concentration was required. Sharon gritted his teeth and attempted the decisive magic that he had only conceived in his mind. Explosion. When the pulsating spirit zone filled with mass carrying photons, an amazing phenomenon occurred. Quack, 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 quack. As the sphere of light expanded and contracted, cracks gradually appeared in the ground. Finally, it split into a huge rock and then broke again into thousands of pieces. End of chapter 149. 149, 150 na. Sunod. Chapter 150, Forced March 4. The explosion from Sharon didn't stop there. The photons infused with physical force continued to strike thousands of rocks, crushing them into rice grain-sized pieces. Q. Sharon gradually sunk into the ground along with the collapsed earth. As the diameter of his zone became 4 times shorter than in the trial, his speed skyrocketed. Even Sharon's indestructible diamond felt a sense of crisis. Only after 20 seconds did the explosion's release stop. When Sharon scanned using the spirit zone, he couldn't sense any magical energy from the magic circle anymore. Phew, Amy, is this good enough? No one replied. The three who had been observing Sharon were all in a state of shock, with identical expressions. Amy let out a hollow laugh, as if she couldn't believe it. Haha, please use some common sense magic, Sharon. What? I thought a lot about this. Anyway, the magic circle is destroyed, right? Huh? Yes, probably. Amy entered the spirit zone and to check the surroundings, although it wasn't really necessary. It wasn't synesthesia, but just by looking at it, the area around the magic circle was devastated. Amy approached where Sharon was. Only after examining the hemispheric topography did she realize the features of Sharon's new magic. Photon amplification through mental pulse, huh? Must be a magic that came up during the training period. Anyway, this is such insane destructive force, isn't it? Even with the disadvantage of having a narrow range, it was trivial compared to the destructive power that pulverizes the earth into dust. It was a magic that perfectly coordinated the three elements of the mental pulse, the level of the indestructible diamond, the divine particles using the immortal function, and the brilliant flash magic. But what were you thinking when you came up with this, huh? No, actually, I didn't expect to use it in this situation. My fort is the four directional defense type, so I was thinking I should learn another defensive spell. That's when the idea of mental pulse came up. So I incorporated god particles. Oh, is that so? So is this a defensive magic? Yes, a defensive spell. Amy resisted the urge to hit Sharon. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that among the defensive magics she knew, this was by far the most destructive. In short, it's magic that creates reactive force by bouncing off a curtain of light containing mass at an incredible speed. Although a single blast was less powerful than photon cannon, firing it 20 times per second would leave no debris in its surroundings. Technically speaking, it was an offensive magic. Multiple attack magic is classified as a bullet, but its wide range far exceeded that number and had a similar effect to a curtain, so there was a high chance that the association would include include it as defensive magic. Sharon, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere? Tess came running and asked, concerned. The explosion was the most chaotic and violent spell he had ever seen. Since Sharon was caught in the middle of all this, she thought it was a miracle that he was still standing. I'm fine. It's not such a dangerous magic as you think. Not dangerous magic? I thought you would be torn apart too. Haha, I'm really fine. You can't call a defensive magic on one that harms the caster, right? As Sharon said, explosion was created to protect the wizard, so the destructive power was just an additional feature. While general defensive magic generates durability through the thickness of the barrier, the explosion uniquely generates reactive force by oscillating between the minimum and maximum radius. Therefore, if the minimum radius is set just outside the wizard, regardless of the circumstances, they won't be caught in the turmoil, like being in the eye of a typhoon. Anyway, let's get down to business. Now that I've got the rhythm, I can cast it faster. It will only take 30 seconds to break the magic circle. Amy regained her senses, belatedly, and immediately changed the strategy. Yes, with this magic, you can go as far as you want while destroying the magic circle. Let's destroy the magic circle first while avoiding the battle as much as possible. It's about provoking the enemy, and when they can't take it anymore, our strategy is to counterattack all at once. What do you think? There was no room for disagreement. Chiron and his group, consisting of men and women, cast teleportation magic. Two streams of flashes flew far and wide through the forest, searching for the next magic circle to become their prey. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Light burst, centered around Sharon. There was an explosion of light. The photon curtain hit the ground, erasing the magic circle without a trace. Sharon and his group were about to destroy their seventh magic circle. While they had been fighting, the number of enemies had decreased by 7, but the enemies were not easily fooled by Sharon and his group's strategies. Even though they gritted their teeth every time the costly magic circle was destroyed, they still maintained composure. However, when the number of destroyed magic circles exceeded 15, there was finally a change in the enemy's posture. They began to feel anxious, worried that if things continued like this, all the magic circles in the mountain would be destroyed. Damn it. How long will they continue like this? It's getting dangerous. We only have about 3 magic circles we can use in a specific location. If things go on like this, sooner or later our operating zone will be drastically reduced. What should we do, Captain? It seems like they are determined to ruin us. The captain of the 10th unit was equally frustrated. The money the Freeman organization spent fortifying the northern forest equaled half of the wealth they had earned over 5 years. Leaving things as they were would mean defeat, even if they won. Call everyone, surround and capture them. The messenger relayed the order through a magic circle to the captains in other areas. As if the other leaders were thinking the same thing, they responded immediately. Sharon and the others could immediately sense that the atmosphere of the battle was rapidly changing. The enemies, their movements, and their expressions were different from before. The most significant change was that, instead of harassing them with the guerrilla tactics, they focused on surrounding them with dozens of people at the same time. However, the massive encirclement wasn't aimed at annihilating Sharon's group, but rather luring them to somewhere. Although they had a numerical advantage, they weren't foolish enough to engage in total warfare against a group that included 2 mages. Tess admired the enemy's tactical changes. It was clear that they had experienced situations like this more than once. This poses a new problem. They are tapping and dragging us somewhere. There's definitely a trap waiting to eliminate the mage. Sharon didn't flinch. If the enemies were putting all their strength into this, it was now a race against time. They needed to reach and rescue Yuna as quickly as possible. All right, let's advance there. We should conserve our strength for now. But what if it's a trap? Isn't that dangerous? I'll manage to push through somehow. Leave it to me. Sharon accelerated and took the lead. Tess might have overtaken using schema, but she didn't dare try to surpass him. Phew, here's something, Sharon. To Tess, the current Sharon was undoubtedly unfamiliar. She had always seen him as a warm and friendly person. The person she worried about the most during this battle was Sharon. She had asked Rian if he could kill people, but in reality, Sharon was also included in that query. However, once they entered real combat, Chiron became an entirely different person. There was no fear, and his handling of enemies was flawless. It was a unique side of Chiron that no one else could see. In battle, brutality and cruelty might be virtues, but watching Chiron fight was like observing a machine that calculated continuously solely for efficiency. Rian, guessing Tess' feelings, secretly smiled. He recalled his own feelings when he first met Chiron. The real sword fight he had with Chiron in the training field was chilling even to think about now. Chiron's insight allows him to understand even the fear of death. Even Rian remembered how he was sweating watching him charge forward, thinking only of wielding his sword. Tess remembered this. Chiron. Once he's activated, no one can stop him. Unlike Rian, Amy seemed a bit worried as she watched Chiron. Of course, she knows very well how magnificent Chiron's insight is, but it seemed that powerful variables like Yuna and Marsha were currently influencing him. Whatever happens, there must be a trap, but isn't this too reckless? Are we charging straight at the enemy without analyzing their strategy? We lost time destroying the magic circle. If Chiron is doing this, I won't stop him. Rian increased his speed, voicing his trust in Chiron, but Tess agreed with Amy. Even as she ran, she had been analyzing the surroundings and spoke with a serious expression. Amy, the terrain seems a bit strange. The men are excited, so let's balance things out. Yeah, that would be great, but what do you mean the terrain is strange? The terrain is strange. If this area hasn't been artificially modified, we'll soon be entering a valley. It's a suitable place to set traps. It could be dangerous. Nature has its own laws. Humans change the shape of things to suit their tastes, but nature never goes against natural law. The terrain had been going downhill as they advanced along the mountain range. Furthermore, the fact that the moisture was rising and there were more ferns than bushes clearly indicated that they were heading towards a valley. However, there's no sound of water. These bastards must have blocked the valley. Blocked the front and attacking from both sides was a strategy close to a textbook warfare. To textbook warfare. Tess was conflicted. It was true that time was essential. However, if they fell into the enemy's trap, they might be the first ones to be annihilated. Amy, this probably won't work. Let's stop Sharon first. Amy nodded without objections. As Tess expected, the path was getting narrower, and the cliff became too high to avoid. The major issue was that the number of enemies who had been setting up the siege was gradually decreasing. I'll say it. Sharon, wait a minute. Amy's voice couldn't be heard. Before she could say anything, Sharon grabbed Rian and used teleportation. It seemed that running alone wasn't satisfying enough for him. Why the heck is he doing that? Amy, who had to chase after him anyway, grabbed Tess and they teleported, but catching up to Sharon proved difficult. While confined to instant movement magic, Amy's abilities were comparable to Sharon's, but not enough to surpass him. Sharon, sprinting ahead, knew Amy was trailing behind, yet he didn't stop his magic. One flash followed another, and in an instant Sharon and Rian entered the valley entrance. There, Sharon stopped teleporting and ran along the shallow creek. Rian, who had followed, asked with a puzzled expression, Sharon, why the rush? From what I can see, this place is a trap. That's why I'm in a hurry. I need to somehow dismantle the trap. It will vary depending on the type of trap, but if I could use light explosion, I'd be able to concentrate the enemy's attacks. Huh? But what if it fails? Then I'll be trapped, unable to move. If I fail here, the operation's difficulty will multiply. That's not the issue. You could die. Let me do it instead. No, I have to do it because I can. If you keep arguing, I'll have no choice but to leave you behind. Rian realized why Sharon had rapidly increased the distance. If he could defend against the enemies alone, there was no way Tess or Amy would have given their consent. Sharon wanted to bet on the side with higher chances, even if it involved risk. It seemed that the idea of there not being much time left to safely rescue Yuna was affecting him. End of chapter 150.